Welcome back to Squawk Box. Many of the largest sports leagues turning to wearable technology to closely track its athletes in the pandemic. The NBA, WNBA, UFC, and NASCAR all inking partnerships with Oura Ring, which recently raised $100 million in funding. Joining us right now is Oura Ring CEO Harpreet Singh Rai. It's great to see you this morning. I, as you know, talk about your ring. We talk about this all the time because I wear this thing. I stack it, as they say. And I can tell you my readiness this morning, Harpreet, unfortunately is low. I'm only at a 76 today. I also have a what's called an 8-sleep bed, and I wear the levels thing, and I do all sorts of things to track all of this. But I want to talk to you about what's happening in the sort of sleep tracking business, because it's you just raised a lot of money, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger business. The question I have is sort of, right now there's sort of a group of us that are sort of fascinated by our own sleep patterns and all of this. But how does it expand, or does it expand to be an even larger franchise over time?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Andrew, and good to see you. Look, I think it's a really good question. I think, sleep, like you mentioned earlier, right? We have adoption from, a lot of sports teams, athletes, even I think the Jets, new recent pick Zach Wilson's sporting an Oura Ring, but also executives, right? I think, Bill Gates to Jack Dorsey to Mark Benioff. But frankly, most of our customers look like me and you, or even, saw Rick Santelli wearing one recently. And I think it's because, people like us are realizing that with better health, we're going to have a better life. And there's a lot that goes into that, right? There's, sleep, there's activity, right? There's diet, right? Even stress and meditation. So I think, consumers are waking up to that, and it's definitely extending. I think, wearable use cases, we do track activity. We've even shown that, we can track things like meditation and show you the quality of that, and have been adding a lot of features there. But even our work during COVID, during the pandemic, right? I think we were able to show that wearables, and particularly, ones like ours that have temperature sensors too, can be extremely helpful for identifying, the onset of illness in advance. And so I think you're going to continue to see these use cases for wearables keep expanding. And frankly, that's going to keep driving consumer interest.
So currently, this is relatively a consumer product. The question is, do you think it becomes an enterprise product? You just mentioned some of the folks who wear them. Bill Gates wears one all the time. Jack Dorsey wears one all the time. Do you think that big companies, and I know, and now we have sports leagues doing it, do you think that big companies are going to ultimately either ask, force, or otherwise request people to wear this? And do you think there'll ever be a moment where you will tie this to insurance in the same way that, like, Progressive, for example, will lower your rate if you're not if you're wearing something, but if you allow them to effectively track how you drive, for example?
Yeah, look, I think it's already happening. In fact, about nearly 20% of our revenue last year was actually sold through the enterprise, or, B2B, as we call it. Some early adopters there have been sports leagues and sports teams, right, who are working with their S&C coaches and data. But frankly, we actually probably, just with the U.S. Department of Defense, between Air Force, Army, and Navy, saw a really big uptake. And as you can imagine, the health and performance of their soldiers is critical. I think you're going to see this extend, and I think the reason is really, corporates today are blunting majority of the cost of healthcare, and unfortunately, that keeps increasing. I think now, there's data showing that, wearables and other things that, if you're sleeping well, if you are exercising, your cost of healthcare is likely going to be lower, and so it's obviously beneficial, to the corporation, to the individual, certainly. To be getting these things subsidized and into long-term health outcomes. And so I think we're already seeing that adoption. Now, data privacy is a tricky thing. Luckily, we have some pretty good frameworks, and we're able to develop that with sports leagues. I think force is a really strong word. I'd rather say, encouraged, shown the benefits of, subsidized. I think when consumers start to realize that, like, hey, this isn't Big Brother. There's protections in place for me to, make sure my data is in my control. But my corporation wants me to be healthier, just like they subsidize my gym membership or even my Peloton now, that they're going to start subsidizing wearables. Absolutely. Lack of sleep and, sort of just the cost of poor productivity is huge, right? So I think, corporations definitely are getting more and more open to it, and we're already seeing it in terms of our revenue.
In terms of just the business model, there's a couple of folks doing it different ways. You sell this as a one-time thing. I think I paid $299 for this one, maybe $399 for this. There's something called the Whoop Band, which competes directly with it. Obviously, they're doing a sort of doing it as a subscription service. Over time, how do you think these things evolve? And by the way, I'm still surprised by this. I know Apple has a sleep mechanism on the watch, but do you worry about some of the big guys just coming in and effectively trying to take over the whole business?
I don't. I think, right now, if you look at health-based wearables, wrist-based, sort of smartwatches or wristbands, there's about 200 million units sold every year. If you look at the smartphone market, it's about 1 billion units sold every year. I think in order for sort of, 200 million units to get to smartphone-like penetration, you got to see these use cases expand. Hey, can this tell me if I perhaps, going to have a heart event like Apple has showed us? Is this going to tell me I may be getting sick like Oura has, right? Or I may even be developing sleep apnea. Many wearables are working on that. I think as those health sensing capabilities expand, you're going to see, the market keep expanding. And frankly, I'll give you a great example. I was just going to say, Andrew, when Fitbit launched sleep tracking, they didn't always used to do that. We saw our sales go up. It's still early days for consumers to understand how this works. So I think in terms of competitors, it's a, rising tide is lifting all boats.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.